Gambling comes to the NES. The Master System games are coming to the GameGear, and Game Boy goes FPS. These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, the show where we travel back in time to find out what was making headlines in the video game and home computer industries 40, 30, and 20 years ago. Today, we're going back to November of 1991. I'm your host, Carlin. I'm joined again by one of our favorite co-hosts, Mads. Welcome back, Mads.
I'm not falling for that one. I heard you say the same to John the other day, Carl. So just skip it.
Yeah, you're both some of the favorite ones.
Okay.
Of all three co-hosts, you're my favorite ones. Congratulations.
Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for having me back.
Oh, dude, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I love having you on here. So let's do some banter. What you been up to?
What have I been up
Tell
to?
us.
So I'm just in my happy place right now, really, because right where I'm sitting, I've got my Amiga 500 out. I've got the an old DOS PC, a Pentium 75 with a Sound Blaster all 32 sound card and all the good stuff in there, and the C64 is right over here as well. So my desk is just full of nostalgia right now.
Oh, dude, you're making me jelly. You do know that.
Yeah, no,
you're making me so jelly.
Just teasing you a bit here. So in the gaming club in the Retro Asylum, we are playing an Amiga game this month. We're playing Sensible Soccer. I'm happy with Sensible
Cannon
Soccer.
Fodder 2 lost out.
Yes, Cannon Fodder lost, and yeah, I'm happy with Sensible Soccer. I would have preferred diving into Cannon Fodder or maybe even Lemmings 2, but really looking forward to giving the Amiga a go anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, come on, you can never go wrong with Sensible software on the Amiga.
No. And as we're speaking, John Hare just joined our Discord, the Retro Asylum Discord.
Really?
He did. So
I gotta check on there. Yeah, no, definitely. Oh yeah, he's on my list of people I still have to interview.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, just because as an Amiga guy, yeah, you couldn't get around Sensible software.
No, they're definitely my favorite software house from back in the day. There's actually a great book by Read Only Memory called, what's it called? I've got it here somewhere. Can't see it right now. But there's a Read Only Memory released a book that was pretty much just a huge interview with John here talking about Sensible software. That was
nice.
Great, actually.
That actually does sound interesting because, I was a fan of theirs back on the C64 already, Whizball, and, of course, my favorite soccer game of all time, Micro Pro Soccer, which is absolutely phenomenal. Well. The first time I scored a goal and it gave me the little rewind effect and it did the replay in black and white, I was just like, oh, this is possible? Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Good times. Yeah. So, that'll be interesting. Is he going to also be playing or joining you guys on the show?
I've got no idea, mate. I only know that he just joined our Discord. So let's see what happens. Dude,
send him a message and ask him if he can jump in and maybe, do something like, tips and tricks or something for the game. That would be cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be really cool. Okay. Sorry. Now I'm just going through options in my head of there's got to be a sprite editor out there. Bring in Megalomania characters to play soccer.
Well,
I'm sure that mod is.
They are actually Megalomania characters, really. So
that's true. Yeah. It all goes back to Megalomania.
It does. And then they become soldiers in Cannon Fodder and soccer players in Sensible Soccer. So yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay, well, that's enough banter. We have plenty to get to today, but before we can turn on a time machine, before we even get to the segment we're about to get to, of course, everybody remember you can follow us on the Twitters and on the Instagram, and all the episodes are up on YouTube, so subscribe there. Even if you're not going to listen, just subscribe. It helps the numbers, click thumbs up on a couple of things. It doesn't cost you anything. And leave some comments. You can join us on the Patreon. All our interviews come up there 3 months early. So we got some really good ones right now up there. And that's all the plugging I have to do. And you should be plugging your stuff as well right here, just since you're here.
Yes, will do. I host the Retro Asylum podcast where we play old games. Really retro stuff all the way back from the late 70s and to, let's say, late 90s is probably the new stuff we'll be covering. And I also host on the Playthrough podcast where we play middle-aged games and more modern games. And it's another kind of show where we do more long-form dives into one game over multiple episodes. So if you're into your gaming, check it out.
What's the latest game on there?
Right now we're playing Her Story. Which is
wow,
quite a short game, really, but it looks really interesting. I haven't. It's actually one of my picks. I picked that game, so I'll be hosting that episode. But I haven't actually had time to play it myself yet. So, but I'm really looking forward to diving into it.
I tried playing that a few years back, and it. And this is, I'm just going to put it out there. It does revolve around law. And as a former criminal defense trial lawyer, I lasted for about an hour.
Okay.
And then it was like, okay, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I keep criticizing all the little bits. I'm like, no, I can't do it. I need to walk away from this product right now. I really wanted to like it. I love the concept of it. But yeah, it just. Yeah.
So this is just like I feel whenever I watch a movie that has some kind of computer technology in there, and then people try to talk about, like, let's say programming or hacking or something like that. I'll be, crap, I can't watch this, and I'll walk away.
Exactly. I have that same effect anytime there's law involved in something, and I just start seeing all the mistakes, and I'm just like, okay, that wouldn't happen. This isn't happening. This plot twist makes no sense whatsoever. That guy would be disbarred. Okay. And yeah.
Well, apparently it's really good, and I know my 18-year-old, she played it and she loved it, so I'm sure I'm going to like it.
Yeah,
and I know nothing about Lawmate, nothing.
Exactly, and this is the thing. If it wasn't for that, I really love the concept. I really wanted to dig into it, and unfortunately, it just kind of that got in the way. I'm sorry. Yeah,
I can see why.
But the last law game that I really, really enjoyed was Devil's Attorney. So. If you haven't played that, it's an iOS game. Probably get through it in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
But it is the funniest thing you will ever play. It's right up there with what was it? Deadly Tower of Monsters or something like that.
Okay.
If you haven't played that game, that's also hilarious. It's comedy gold. It's from that one's from a Chilean group, and I can't remember. May have even been a Danish group, or now maybe a Swedish group. I actually contacted them after I finished playing Devil's Attorney and told them I'm a lawyer and I loved your game, and they were like, and they actually wrote back and saying, we were afraid lawyers would have a problem with this. It's brilliant. It's everything the Ace Attorney series should have been.
So I was just about to say that's the only law game I've ever played, Ace Attorney.
I couldn't get through that either. I played. There's a sort of knockoff of it, I think from the same people, based on the Harvey Birdman series.
Okay.
Which I did play through just because I was a huge fan of the TV show. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
Yeah.
But no, this one, it actually has a really cool little game mechanic with upping your character, and the whole thing is set in the 80s.
So wait a second. Are you saying that the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney isn't like law is in the real world? Believe
it or not, no. I
really
know this
now.
is very, very disappointing. You don't just stand up and yell objection all the time. Yeah, you do that. You do say objection a lot, but if you stood up and pointed fingers at people, the judge would be very unhappy with you very, very quickly. Okay. Just saying. But
it is in Japan, isn't it? Or
yeah, and
very Japanese in its setting anyway.
Yes, and maybe they do things like that in Japan. I'm not a Japanese lawyer, but my money's on no.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Okay, but dude, I look forward to hearing your review of that game because like I said, it's unfortunately something I didn't get through, but I really wanted to. So it's still on my Steam list. So at some point. Okay. that's enough plugging. Our first order of business before we turn on the time machine is for the co-host to play one of the games that was reviewed in a magazine cover dated November of 1991. Remember, that's always how we're dating all these things. All the events happened earlier. It's a framing device, people. Don't give us comments that stuff happened at different times. And it has to be a game that the co-host has not played before, and they get 7 minutes with this game to experience it, the joy, the sorrow, the pain, the ecstasy, in a segment we call 7 Minutes in Heaven. Mads, are you ready to delve into the game of the day, Spider-Man, the arcade game by Sega?
My body is ready, mate.
Excellent. Your mind, though, won't be. No, okay, something like that. Okay, off you go.
Spider sense tingling, signaling danger. Trouble up ahead. Let's go, Spider-Man.
Mads, welcome back from your 7 Minutes in Heaven. So, based on what you saw, describe the game to our listeners.
So Spider-Man from 1991 is a classic arcade beat-em-up in the vein of Double Dragon or Final Fight, for example. Looks a bit like Final Fight, looking at the size of the sprites and the destructible backgrounds and so on and so forth. What took me a bit by surprise was that it started out as kind of like a Final Fight clone. And then all of a sudden, when I was almost through the first level, it turned into a platformer as well. So there were platforming sections where I'd be jumping around as Spider-Man and shooting my little web bullets or whatever you want to call those at the enemies, trying to get to the next beat-em-up section. So that was quite nice touch, actually. So some nice graphics, some good animation and some quite interesting scenes, but a subpar beat 'em up that was made a bit more fun by adding some platforming elements, really.
And that pretty much sums up, I think, most people's reaction to the game even back then. It's not what you would consider one of the great success stories in Sega's career.
Nah, probably not. No. It's a game I'd happily play if it was standing. If I was at a chip shop and it was standing in the corner as the only arcade machine, I'd definitely play it and I'd be entertained. So it isn't a bad game per se. But if it was standing next to Double Dragon or Final Fight, I probably wouldn't touch it.
And as the sole game for a very long time in the student rec room at my college back in the day, that was the only reason I kept putting quarters in it. So. But yeah, I mean, it does use the sprite scaling technology. It's using the System 32 board, which was Sega's last sprite scaling board. Yeah. So I mean, it for the time, it was very impressive tech. Neo Geo hasn't gotten into that whole sprite scaling thing with Art of Fighting, or was it Art of Fighting the one that had the sprite scaling?
Oh, I forget, mate.
Well, I mean, a lot of them did. Samurai Showdown did and stuff, but the first one that did it in a big way, I think, was Art of Fighting. And that's yet to come. That's still on the horizon as well. So it looked really impressive for the time. And but unfortunately, the game that is remembered that came out at the same time was Captain America and the Avengers from Data East, which was also a side-scrolling beat 'em up, but much smaller sprites, a lot more on screen. Stuff you could pick up in the background and throw and use as a weapon, which was missing from this game, and stuff like that.
Late 80s, early 90s, everything was a scrolling beat 'em up, mate. Everything. Yes. I mean, even The Simpsons had a scrolling beat 'em up. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, well, it was believe it was just the two forces coming together of the technology finally being able to do enough sprites on the screen.
Yeah.
And second, it was a generic enough format that you could slap licenses on it. And this is right around the time when everybody is slapping a license after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit big in the arcades.
That was a wonderful game as well.
Oh, yeah, tremendous. You had that. You had Moonwalker. You had, like you said, The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah, even Marvel Jackson was in a scrolling beat 'em up. That's true.
Isometric scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was actually a great game. Oh,
Yeah, it was.
missed that one. And then when I played the C64 version, it had nothing to do with the arcade game. I was at first a bit disappointed.
I can see that.
Okay, I believe you've already given your recommendation. If it was standing alone in a chip shop, you would play it.
Yes.
Can't ask for more than that. Drop in some coins. Okay, then our next segment is to check in with our good friend Ethan Johnson in a little segment we call the Department of Corrections. Ethan, welcome back. So, before you can tell me what I got wrong in our October 1991 jump, we have an order of business.
The Mads comment. It's not very mad though, so I'm not sure. Not sure if it specifically counts. But Mads was questioning what did Bob stand for, the code name of Syndicate, and Peter Molyneux answered this question about a decade later. It stood for Blue and Orange Bloke.
Oh, interesting. So
because
yes,
I presume that the original characters were blue and orange, but I do not know. I do not know enough about Syndicate to tell you whether or not they would continue to be blue and orange at the time.
Well, by the time the game came out, they were not. But I can definitely see that given the screenshots I've seen, a blue and orange sprite would work. In the first screenshots that they released, the game engine was sort of there, but yeah, the graphics that they had put in were just pretty atrocious placeholder stuff.
So that is what Bob is. It took a little digging to find that, just because you can't trust everything that you read on a wiki page. But I did find a source, and it will be in the show notes.
Yeah, but then again, you are quoting Peter Molyneux here, so I don't know if you can still trust that.
I took that into account, but this was 2003 that he said this, so it was before his real reputation got started.
Oh, that's true. But you remember, we've reported here on the show that in the 1990s that one of the 1990 jumps that he had built Lego models to test all the Populous maps, which of course was utter nonsense. But he already had a flair for the extravagant and distant from the truth back in the day. So.
And if you can take that, then listen to his GDC talk, because it is still funny. Yes. It's still fun to listen to. You just can't take anything that he says as truly true. Anyways, the next point.
But I still would love to meet the guy. He's the kind of guy, I want to have a beer with Peter Molyneux so bad. Sorry.
Peter Molyneux, come on our show. This show, not my show. Anyways, so next on the point, all your opinions about Dune are wrong. By the way, just to put it out in front. So I did see it. It was really good. But the main thing is like, you were complaining, the next film's not going to come out for another 4 years at least. It's already coming out in 2023, Carl. So
they haven't started filming yet. I will believe the 2023 date when it actually premieres in a movie theater, because with the cast that they have, getting those guys back in front of the cameras, all on schedule, and getting the special effects done, because the second half of that movie is going to have a lot more effects than the first half. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, also, not all of the cast returns. I'm not, this should not be a big spoiler. But
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of the books. I know who has already died at this point of the story, but I'm just saying. I will be very, very surprised if they actually do pull off a 2023 for this one.
Anyways, your opinions are wrong. Let's go into the next part. You said that Atari was still part owned by Namco in 1991, but that is not true. They have already divested everything. They took Atari's operation stuff, their arcades, and that becomes Namco's Cybertainment. But Namco no longer had a stake in Atari in 1991.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly when the split happened anymore. Yeah, cool.
And we must return to this correction, for I have said it before, 3D graphics are not vector graphics, even if they are wireframe. Not the same thing. Vector is a very specific thing.
I know, and I misspoke. I stand corrected. I am very sorry.
You should be. Anyways. And final thing, you were wondering about these game development university things that were happening in Japan and like what kind of the deal of it was. So these game development universities, quote unquote, were more like summer programs. They were things that you could take extracurricular. They would not count towards any sort of actual curricular thing. Just to say that out front. And this one by Human Entertainment, I believe. I don't know if it was actually the first one or just the first one that gets reported on in the West, but it was not the only one. Enix, I know, did one, or at least kind of sponsored one. The guy who did one of their big early Mahjong games was one of the big professors from that. But yeah, these game development universities were not full course universities. They kind of presumed that you had computer knowledge already, and so they were training you to come into, a specific studio. And this was something that happened quite a bit in Japan. Sega especially. Through the 1960s, they were setting up kind of these technical universities that they would onboard technicians onto, and some of them would later become designers, some of them would stay technicians. But they developed this over time. They have these official classrooms where they would be teaching people the ins and outs of, originally electromechanical and then later electronic game design. There's even some footage of this stuff.
Ah, cool.
So I know this is fairly common in Japan when it's very specifically tied to a company to onboard people through basically a curricular program. But it was new for game development.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. And I haven't found any other newer or any other earlier mentions of this. So this was the first one that I saw mentioned. But even in that article, it was from one of the English gaming mags. They did mention that there were others. This was the only one that they mentioned by name, though.
Yeah, so I imagine that if there's an earlier one, it's probably started in the late 80s or something. But there were a couple in the 90s. I do know that.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay. So, that's October of 1991.
That's it?
Polished and finished just for you.
Oh.
And you can put your name tag back on your desk and flee the Department of Corrections before more corrections occur.
I will do my best. I will try not to fall short of my wonderful accomplishment here today or something. I got nothing. Okay. Ethan, thank you as always for your service.
Likewise. Goodbye.
Blue and orange bloke? Really? I mean, that's just crazy. But it seems you're getting better, Carl. There was not that much that was correct this time.
No. I actually, I feel very confident in my skills. Almost going to get to the point where I'll be cocky and who knows, I'll say something really stupid.
Almost?
Almost. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got an ego problem. It's all good. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, he's already sent me the list for the last 40-year jump, and that already brought me back down to earth. So I already know last week's episode when we went back 40 years. There's a lot there.
Okay,
it's a long list. But that's just the nature of this beast. This is why we bring him in, so that, keep us honest, so people know this is a trusted source of information, at least if you wait a month to get the corrections.
But I guess researching stuff that's 40 years in the past must be quite hard, because it wasn't reported on as thoroughly as what you got like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, was it?
I mean, the stuff 30 years ago also isn't that well reported on at the time, but we have a lot of data that comes afterwards to fill in a lot of the gaps. But the stuff from 40 years ago, I mean, or sometimes like last episode, I went all the way back 70 years. for a story. And of course, all of those people are dead. And all I have to work off of sometimes are a couple of little blurbs in the newspaper and stuff. So it's not always easy to do. And this is why I try to always make it clear that I'm just reporting what's in these stories. And then we use Ethan to clear it up.
Yep.
But we have a lot to get through today. So are you ready to turn on the time machine?
I am strapped in and ready, mate.
Okay, we are setting the dial back to November of 1991, and here we go.
Now there's a new game in the video arcade. 1991. Virtual reality. Let's play Thunderblade.
The market's very fickle.
Welcome to November of 1991. Mads, what's our first story?
The first story is Midi Maze is coming to Game Boy.
Midi Maze, the groundbreaking Atari ST multiplayer FPS, is coming to, of all systems, the Game Boy. The renamed Faceball 2000 will allow up to 4 players to blow each other's happy smiley-faced icons to Kingdom Come.
So what I pick up from this mostly is the naming Faceball 2000. So we've already, in 1991, that's when we started putting 2000 in everything, and then it would be futuristic. So there are so many games from now on and going on up till 2000 that's called 2000, just because.
Oh, of course. I mean, because it sounds futuristic. I mean, we were calling things 2000 way before that already. But yeah, 2000 just sounds, it's the future. It's coming.
Yeah.
And yeah. Did you ever play Faceball 2000?
No, never, mate.
Oh, have you ever played Midi Maze?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. Oh, dude, another reason why at some point, maybe post-pandemic, you've got to come down to Leipzig for the long night of video games. It's a yearly thing. And they actually have a full-blown Midi Maze set up every year.
Nice.
And I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 player maximum, but it's Atari STs connected over the MIDI port using that for data transfer, and you're playing an FPS. Now it's running at like 6 or 7 frames a second at best, but it's a
at least
full-blown
that's better
FPS.
than 3D. So.
Oh yes, very much so. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing experience, and to think that they were doing this, I believe the game came out originally in 87 or 88 for the Atari ST.
Impressive.
It's very cool, and I've played the Faceball 2000 on 4 Game Boys linked together.
Okay.
Also, pretty terrible frame rates, but there's something really cool because you're relatively close to everybody holding your Game Boy and playing against one another. It's a wild, trippy experience.
Yeah, sounds like fun. I have to check out a video of that at some point. I've never heard of it.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, check out video. There's tons of it online. I put a link to the Wikipedia entry and everything in the show notes, and it really is. I mean, it's the FPS. It's the multiplayer labyrinth shooting game, and it's great.
So do you need special equipment for it, or can you actually daisy chain MIDI connection?
That I don't know. I don't know how that actually works because I've never set it up.
Back in the day, we used to do serial link instead. You could do that actually between an Atari ST and an Amiga for some games. But I've never heard of playing over the MIDI cables instead. The MIDI.
Yeah, well, because the Amiga didn't have a MIDI out. But that was one of the big selling points of the Atari. So I'm guessing it's got to be daisy chained of some kind.
Yeah, it must be.
But or maybe there's some other kind of link set up. But like I said, they do have that set up every year at this one night long event. And I've pretty much every year I've gone, I've always given it at least one go just because, I mean, come on, when else am I going to be able to do that? Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
It is. So, and sticking with Atari's legacy.
Yes, we have Atari launches the Lynx 2.
The super long, scratch-prone, battery-chugging Lynx has been replaced with the slightly less long, less scratch-prone, and if you turn off the backlight, less battery-hungry Lynx 2. At the same $99.95 price tag, will this revised color handheld be able to catch up to Nintendo's Game Boy?
Short answer, no.
No, no.
Great machine though, and it has a great library of games. I have the original Atari Links here. It is huge and very scratched actually on the backside at least. But yeah, and you need to turn on the backlight because otherwise you can't see the screen anyway. But man, they've got some great games there. Great versions of California games and Chips Challenge, of course, and yeah, APB is really good on the Links as well. And definitely a system that should have won. But probably lost because of the size and as you say, because it was so battery hungry.
Well, it was the size, so it wasn't really portable in that sense.
No.
And they didn't have any decent games. Remember, this is Tramiel run Atari, so they did not want to spend anything for R&D. They got the Links for free. It was already developed by Epix. Then they screwed Epix over by not paying for a lot of the stuff. I mean, Epix goes under in part at least because Tramiel just doesn't pay what he owes them, and then takes the thing over without paying for it. And on top of that, when they do cut deals to get software developed for the system, they're not really going with the cream of the crop. I mean, their biggest thing at this period is a deal with Atari Games, the arcade company, which is completely separate from Atari Home. And they're, getting games like Pit Fighter and the like, but that's not going to be the system seller when you're up against Mario Land and Zelda and stuff like that on the Game Boy.
Perhaps. I still think it has a great software library, but maybe that's just me.
It has some really good titles, but if you compare it with the Game Boy at the same time, I mean, come on, where are the Final Fantasy games? Where are the Ultima games? Where's Gargoyle's Quest? These amazing jump and run games. In Japan, they've just released at this point the first version of what would later be the Advance Wars series for the Game Boy. And I mean, come on, these are cool strategy tactical games. There's Links, I don't even think gets a turn-based strategy game in the entire library.
Could be. I haven't played any.
Yeah,
well, great machine though. I mean, it was so ahead of its time with a great color screen and actually quite good controls, and it was a machine that you didn't need to be right outside of the sun to be able to see, which you did with your Game Boy. So I really like it.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with you. I remember playing it as a demo unit back probably 90 or 91, and I was just blown away by how awesome it looked. And let's face it, it was developed by a large part of the same team that did the Amiga. I mean, there's a lot of that technology design aesthetic in there. It's just Atari was too cheap and had such a bad reputation. Nobody was really willing to develop titles for it, at least none of the majors.
Oh, well, but on to another huge handheld that could chuck through batteries. Master System to GameGear converter released.
A converter that allows for use of Master System games on Sega's GameGear has been launched. The Master Gear converter is a third-party product out of Taiwan, but seems to do the job just fine, even if the low-res GameGear screen does make some text and smaller objects hard to identify. Considering the currently very meager GameGear library, this could be a godsend for the system, or just eat into Sega's strategy of re-releasing Master System titles as handheld carts.
So have you ever actually played with one of these with the converter and a Master System game?
No, I haven't.
So the size of what you're holding has got to be huge, because a Master System cartridge isn't small. And you need to plug something into your Game Gear, which is, well, I guess already rather big, actually. But it would just be very bulky.
Yeah, it would have to be tremendously bulky now that you mention it. That's right. Now, I honestly can't remember how much a Master System cartridge weighs. It's probably not a lot, but yeah.
They're a lot smaller than a NES cartridge, for example. Half the size of that, but still they're not small. I mean, compared to a Game Gear cartridge or a Lynx cartridge or whatever, it's huge.
That's true. That's true. That I didn't even think about that when I was writing this up, but you're right. It would just make the whole thing very, very bulky.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, at this point, the Game Gear has a very, very meager library. There's not a lot of titles out for it. It recently was released. And so this is one way to at least try to increase the appeal of the system. Now, Sega would launch their own branded version of this device. At least in Europe. I'm not sure if there was a formal release of this in the US, but then again, the Master System really wasn't that popular in the US. So I'd have to look that up. I just don't know that. But it looks like, from what I could see online, that even Sega's branded version was probably made by the same company that made this unlicensed version. They just, remolded the plastic to add like a Sega designed logo on it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to it. I mean, it's really just rewiring the cables. There's no additional process or anything. It's just, the data is the same because the Game Gear is just a master system.
There is one difference, if I recall correctly, with the screen resolution, not the aspect ratio. It's not the exact same, is it, between what you display on a TV screen with your Master System and what was actually on the Game Gear? I'm sure there's something that you lose the bottom 5% or whatever when you're plugging them in like that.
Yeah, and one of the magazines that talked about this, there's 2 magazine articles talking about this month. And one of them actually listed a bunch of games that they tested with it. And one of the games, I believe it was one of the RPGs, did have this problem where the aspect ratio went wonky. And but the other ones seemed to be okay. So I'm guessing it had to do with whether or not the game was using, the scan lines on the TV, maybe to do extra text or something, or to up the resolution. But that's all purely speculation on my part. And I do know, especially because I got obsessed for a while with Tectoy, the Brazilian company that was doing the Sega stuff. And they had ported a bunch of Game Gear games to the Master System. So in the later years, when Master System was dead in Europe and North America, they would be taking the Game Gear games and rejiggering them for release for the Master System because that was still a viable platform in Brazil. Yeah. And so you would get these screenshots of the games where suddenly, they'd have to expand part of the background, or you'd have black bars around it because the Game Gear game was designed for the lower resolution. So it would be interesting to see a side-by-side comparison of some of these games running through this hardware. To see, what the screen would do with them. But I'm sure it has something to do with, refresh rates and how the system is processing the individual pixels.
Yeah, it must be, because it can't just be the aspect ratio of the screen itself, because I'm sure, for example, that you could actually get a TV module for the Game Gear to watch regular TV shows as well.
Yeah, that was available at launch, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, well. On to the next news then. On to the next news. We've got a lot to cover today.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So Minnesota to test NES-based online gambling system. That sounds interesting.
Oh, definitely. Minnesota has announced that they will run a test of an online lottery system that would run through specialty software for the NES. 10,000 test households would get the devices and have access to all of the state's lottery offerings at a surcharge of $10 a month.
So let me just understand this. You could buy lottery tickets with your NES over a phone line, for example? That's what they want to do?
Yes.
And it would cost you $10 a month to be able to spend more money to buy lottery tickets.
Yes.
Okay. So how well did that go, Carl?
Well, let's read the next headline.
I'll take the next one then. Minnesota drops plan to test NES-based online gambling system.
In a surprise move, Minnesota has decided to drop plans to test their NES-based online gambling system. Several other notable personalities in the industry spoke out, and the idea of a quote, kid's toy like the NES being used for gambling rubbed many the wrong way.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. It sounds a bit fishy, doesn't it?
Yeah. As far as I can tell, they actually had the system up and running and it was ready to go. Mm-hmm. And so these articles are all coming out in the same month. So it's really just, the publications missing each other by a week or something.
Yeah. So who actually developed this? Was this something Nintendo themselves were behind?
Nintendo themselves apparently were behind this.
Did they use it anywhere? Was it used in Japan?
No. But remember, in Japan, the Famicom does have a modem accessory.
Yeah.
So there is an online service in Japan where you can do all sorts of stuff. I believe, and I'm really leaning out the window on this one, but I believe you can even do horse betting in Japan over this.
Okay.
So it's not that this is a completely unfamiliar territory. And the idea that, it's a state-sponsored lottery system, and the lottery systems in the U.S. are always about, we're getting you addicted to gambling, but it's for a good cause because the money is going to go partially to financing schools or something.
Yeah.
So that's where this is coming from and where the idea was. And the NES makes perfect sense because this is before the DOS system revolution. You don't have ubiquitous computers in homes, but the NES is as close to a ubiquitous CPU-based device as you're going to get in the U.S. at this point. So using it as a hardware platform, as a standardized hardware platform, makes perfect sense.
The only problem is that in the US, the NES would probably be in the kids' rooms.
Well, kids' rooms or, the living room and stuff, that's obviously a big deal. Now, I got a couple of fun quotes here from the different articles. The one is from Tony Buzza, Bouza. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It just sounds like a mafiosi at that point. And he was the former gaming commissioner in Minnesota. He told the New York Times in 1991, kids are gambling now. This will allow them to gamble more. Now, I'm not sure what he means by kids were already gambling before this, but, I guess it was a problem that they were buying scratch-offs or something. And then Heitmann, and I can't remember his first name, and I screwed up the copying. I think it's Jacob Heitmann. He was the general manager of Sierra Online's gaming network, which was also something that existed already at this point. So we talked about this a few months ago on the show, where Sierra's got their online service. This is all pre-internet for to play games, and Sierra at this time, one of their biggest products was the Hoyle's Book of Games, where they had card games and stuff. You could play all this online. Famously, Bill Gates and famous investor, and I'm blanking on his name right now. The Oracle of Omaha. I'll think of it when I don't need it. But they would play bridge together over this system.
Okay.
And so he, of course, he's also has a horse in this race because, he also runs a online game system, competing one. So he told the New York Times, "It's Jimmy the Greek comes home to your kid's bedroom. Have a bad feeling for lotteries. As a family game company, I would not do it or advocate that our company do it." So sounds a little bit like, Nintendo telling Congress that, they would never have Night Trap on their system because,
of course.
And Mortal Kombat, we won't do that. But not with blood, at least. So, yeah. Okay. But, so Minnesota pulls out of this deal.
Okay. So, in other news, Psygnosis teams up with EA to publish on the Genesis.
That's right. Psygnosis will be releasing their first two Mega Drive games through Electronic Arts, Shadow of the Beast and The Killing Game Show.
Couldn't they have chosen some good games instead?
At this point, which good games other than Lemmings does Psygnosis have?
True.
Okay, let's
released on everything. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's Psygnosis at this point. They are the French developer of England, aka all nice graphics and very little gameplay.
Yeah,
I know I'm going to get some hate mail for that one, but
so Shadow of the Beast was a beauty, and it sounded spectacular as well. but it doesn't really play very well, does it?
No, it sucks. And Killing Game Show, which gets renamed, I believe, to Fatal Rewind, is slightly better in gameplay. But I mean, if you're putting it on a console, you've got to compete with console level quality and polish and game design. And the European computer game makers, unfortunately, just don't have that. That's
sadly true.
Yeah. I mean, some great concepts, beautiful ideas, wonderful tech, but they never put in, that extra 6 months of design polish, probably because you're only planning on selling like 100,000 units if you're lucky, or 10,000 units sometimes if you're lucky, and the rest will be pirated copies. So this thing has to go out there and you have another 3 months to get the next game ready.
But still, European developers gave us stuff like Megalomania, for example, and Lemmings, 2 of my absolute favorite games ever.
Yes, but think about it. Do you love the game progression? Did you finish either of those games?
I think I finished Lemmings at some point, and I've definitely been at the very, very last level of Megalomania, but I've never figured out how you actually beat that, because you start building, and after a few minutes, everybody, all of your opponents are built into those little black houses that's only on the very last level that you can't destroy in any way.
Yeah, the obsidian buildings.
Got no idea how to win the last level.
Oh, and this is the problem. I mean, it's a lot of those games, the level designs were done, fly by night, get it done, push it out. There's really not a great level of care given to, getting that perfect balance, right?
So
like in a Mario game.
When you're talking about Megalomania, right?
Oh, dude, I love Megalomania. I love it to death, but I never even got close to that. I maybe made it to the 6th or 7th planet, and that was it.
Okay, I've played a lot, so I've got all the way to the last one. I know that.
Yeah, I just got so hectic that I just, it just kind of broke me at that point.
Okay.
And Lemmings also same thing. I mean, I just got to a point where it was just like, it became more frustrating than enjoyable. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. Maybe try picking up Lemmings 2 at some point. It's less aggravating and more fun, actually.
I had Lemmings too. I still have my box copy, and that one I found even more aggravating.
Really?
But my problem with Lemmings 2, and I know this is a complete side note, and everybody who's here for the history, I'm sorry, but we have to talk about this. My problem with Lemmings 2 was the sheer number of new Lemmings abilities.
Yeah.
Became overwhelming to try to build a strategy, because I just kept being like, okay, now I've got to learn this guy. Now I've got to learn this guy. In the first game, I literally could look at the screen, and after having played it for so many dozens, if not hundreds of hours, I could tell you, right, just looking at a level, I could say, okay, I need 3 staircase builders to get across this ravine, because I could count the pixels in my head.
Yep.
But suddenly you got like 5 different variations of the builder.
Yeah.
And you never got, or I at least never got to that point where I felt like I got a feeling for predicting and strategizing. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. But for me, Lemmings 2 was also more about just having fun and messing around with all the different abilities than doing the perfect run. Like Lemmings 1 was all about the perfect run.
Yeah. But that was kind of my thing, was the perfect run. Okay. Like I would play, I mean, I'm the guy who played through Wings with the same character all the way through. Okay, every time I died, I before the computer had a chance to save, because it would do the auto save, I would reset it and reload it and play it again until I passed the level, and only then would I let it save.
Okay.
I would literally pop out the floppy disk. After the level was loaded, I'd pop out the floppy disk, play the level, and if I didn't win, I just, reboot it without putting the floppy disk back in.
That's a dedication for you.
Dude, it was like 120 levels. I made it through with the same character. I was
never actually finished that, but it's a great game.
Oh no, you should. I mean, especially the diary. I mean, it's all about the diary entries at the end, because the levels just keep it's basically the same thing repeated a billion times.
Yeah,
but
lots of mini games.
Yeah, but when you get towards the end of the war and stuff, and he's gone through all these friends and other characters who have died and stuff, you really feel at the end like when you get to victory has happened. You're just like, there's this emotional thing that just goes through you, and all you're doing is looking at a little bit of text. Sorry. Yeah.
Sounds beautiful.
Okay.
So we better get moving. So
Yes.
The next piece of news is Sega still miffed over Stormlord.
As we talked about back in our May 1991 jump, Sega had delayed the launch of Razorsoft's Genesis port of Stormlord due to some naughty bits in the graphics. Well, apparently Razorsoft has continued to market the game even though Sega revoked their third-party license in June. Now Sega is suing for unauthorized use of their trademarks, copyrights, and logos in ads and packaging. Sega's suit is actually a countersuit, as Razorsoft filed a closed suit against them claiming that Sega is holding $250,000 that belong to Razorsoft for cartridges. The suit covers both Stormlord and Technocop.
So remind me, what kind of naughty bits did they have?
Well, Stormlord was originally a European home computer game. Was it Hewson? I think it was the successor company to Hewson. I can't remember who they were. And it was a sequel to another game. It was you were this Viking and a side-scrolling thing. It really wasn't anything to write home about. But there were these statues in the game that were topless fairies.
Okay.
And those were supposed to be, altered or changed for the Genesis release. And I don't believe that they did, or they were very reluctant to do it. Back and forth. And apparently behind the scenes, Sega said, hey, Razorsoft, we're not doing this. We're revoking the license. They had previously already released a Genesis game called Technocop, which was also a port of home computer game, and it was a mixture of behind the car, into the screen racing games with some, I believe, shooting, or you just had to bump certain cars, to stop criminals, and then you'd get to a destination and you would have a side-scrolling action game. The game was absolutely terrible, but it had one feature that was in all the screenshots on the packaging and in the ads, where if you hit somebody with a bullet, they basically turn into this giant explosion of blood and drip down the wall or whatever.
Sounds great.
Oh, yeah. Terrible game.
So now, dear listeners, we're actually entering the green section. What you can see is that Carl has these nice notes for me to look at, for his co-host to look at, and they're color-coded. But he never tells us what the color coding is all about. But we're going into the green section now.
The green section means we're moving into the PC. So first we had handhelds, then we had console, now we're going into PC.
Wonderful. So now we're going into
I should have
PC
told
news.
you that. Yeah, sorry.
So the first piece of news here is Multix wants to bring NES gaming to your PC.
Texas computer company Multix Incorporated has announced plans to offer a PC add-on card that will allow users to run NES games off of floppy disks. The card will replicate the hardware of the NES, and they are currently in talks with game makers to offer their titles on floppy disk for between $5 and $12 each.
I'm pretty sure Nintendo wouldn't be happy about this.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, this is the latest in a long string of people trying to, do something with the NES library or NES games. And, obviously Super Nintendo is already out. Genesis is already out. The NES still has a couple of good years ahead of it. But the idea is the NES is such old hardware at this point. It's relatively cheap to replicate. You've got you already have pirated, bootleg NESs out there in the market. So this company, which curiously enough still has a website up and running, it's copyrighted in 1997. It looks like it was built in 1997, but the website is still running. Multix.com is still there, and they're advertising that they, do hardware solutions. I couldn't quite figure out what they were supposedly selling, but the company is still there. And so this was an interesting little idea But obviously, I couldn't find anything online. I can't see any Nintendo licensee being willing to, release their games as floppy disks. And it's kind of curious because in Game Zone magazine, a UK magazine this month, they have a quick blurb about how there is this new custom hardware that pirates are using to dump ROM images, and they don't call them ROM images yet, but dump the data off of game cartridges for systems like the NES and the Super NES and Genesis onto floppy disks.
So I was just about to say that this sounds like they're creating a piece of hardware that can play pirated games, and they know it, but they just to cover their ass, they're going to talk to some game makers to see if they can sell a few titles on disc themselves.
Basically. I mean, it could be that, or they really thought maybe, there'd be a secondary market for this software.
Yeah.
So people don't have to port it, because we're still in the era of having to port things, not, like nowadays where one click of the button and you got 5 executable files for different OSs and certain game engines. So there would be a market for this. I mean, just think about, if you could play NES games on your PC and you're still running an XT or a slow AT, then that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
But there's no way that Konami or any of these guys are just going to, release their stuff on reproducible floppies. That's just not
gonna happen.
in the cards. But yeah, and this whole idea of dumping cartridge games onto floppy disks is something we will be revisiting a few more times over the next couple of years, because it's going to go from just an obscure sort of handmade thing that some pirates are using to a more commercially viable product that is going to cause some controversy in the next couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in more console news in this PC gaming section, Computer Gaming World magazine goes console.
Stalwart PC master racers CGW have turned to reviewing console games this month with Sega's Phantasy Star 3 and a preview of Toe Jam and Earl. They ask if PC gamers can really become console gamers and seem pretty impressed with what Sega has managed to do in regards to storytelling in their console RPG. Could we see them fall from their high horse?
Yes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Computer Gaming World is... it's if anybody who hasn't read Computer Gaming World magazines from the 80s and 90s, it's really hard to express just how stuck up and douchebaggy they can be. I mean, literally, it's like, we are the ones who give you in-depth ideas about games, to the extent where they will have like a 3-page review with one screenshot that's in black and white. It's that kind of publication, especially at this point in time. And it's really, really, any mention of game consoles is just, the world coming to an end. We've talked about this several times on the show over the last couple of years. And the fact that they have this full review of Phantasy Star 3 and a preview of Toe Jam and Earl. And there's also a 2-page ad for another upcoming Genesis game, is all kind of like, maybe we're missing out. Maybe we can try to convince ourselves consoles are also like computers a little bit. And I think this is there's this weird tinge of, let's see how this goes over with our readership, and should we go for it or not? And it's it's interesting.
Seems like a big deal then. If they
it was.
Yeah. Okay. And I can answer part of that question. You say they ask if PC gamers can really become console gamers, and that answer is yes, they can. I'm still a PC gamer, but I do play lots of consoles.
Yeah, and I mean I'm PC hardcore as well, but at the end of the day, I mean most of the stuff I play is essentially console games. And what is really interesting here is that as more and more action games land on DOS machines, Wing Commander, is the hottest thing around. Wing Commander 2 is already being reviewed in the magazines this month. As that becomes a bigger and bigger thing, it's harder and harder to justify that, we're the RPG where you need to know 12 shortcuts on your keyboard in order to play it, old school Ultima style. As we're moving more and more into this world. I mean, there was also a mention this month that a Windows version of SimCity is going to be coming out.
Yep.
And so suddenly you're not playing with the keyboard, now you're playing with a mouse, and it's becoming more of a graphical interface. I think there's a part of them that realizes, we can't be completely isolated from this.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Yeah. They're not going to follow through with it, mind you. They're going to this will be a very short-lived experiment. Okay. They're going to go right back.
Back on the high horse.
But 10 years later, by the time 10 years later comes around, they will have like 1 or 2 pages dedicated to just keeping track of what's happening on the consoles, because so many of the big games by then are ports of console games. And they just can't, ignore it anymore.
So this next piece of news is really exciting for me. Revolution Software takes on Scum.
Oh, yes. Revolution Software's virtual theater game engine has been announced. This point-and-click adventure game engine will differ from similar engines like LucasArts' Scum and Sierra's AGI in that it will allow NPCs to roam around the world on their own, creating a more vibrant and immersive world. The first game to be released using the engine will be the somewhat disappointing Lure of the Temptress, but the engine will ultimately be the birthplace of the beloved Broken Sword series.
And more importantly, Beneath a Steel Sky, which is such a brilliant game.
Oh, yeah, no, amazing game.
Yeah, so I love Revolution Soft. I kind of agree on the somewhat disappointing Lure of the Temptress, as you say. I enjoyed it, but it's nowhere near as good as what they've been putting out after that. But from Beneath the Steel Sky and forward, it's been pure gold, all of it, if you ask me.
Yeah, I haven't played a tremendous amount of their catalog, but Lure of the Temptress, I was really looking forward to it. I really wanted that to be a good one. It didn't really click with me, and I did get to play Beneath the Steel Sky, but many, many years later. Yeah. And I have played the first, I think, 2 Broken Swords. So really good games. I like those.
Yeah, great games.
But yeah.
Did you play the new one, Beyond the Steel Sky?
No, I haven't gone down that road yet. Is it any good?
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, okay, cool. No, that's on the list then. I definitely have to, as soon as I have a window of time, then I'm going to tackle it, because, the first one is a great game.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dave Gibbons art.
Yes, the little comic book that came with it. I mean, I remember buying that. I actually bought it for the PC, I think, back in the day when it was just released. It's a great game.
Yeah, I remember I almost bought it for the Amiga, and it was right around the time when I was sort of realizing I'm not going to have the Amiga that much longer, and it was like so many discs, and I was like, no, let's wait, and yeah.
So I've got a little test for you here. Now you just say Scum engine. What does Scum stand for?
Scripting and something. Oh crap! I know the MM is Maniac Mansion.
Yes. You got 3 out of 5.
Yeah, no, it's scripting and
script creation utility for Maniac Mansion.
That's it. Script creation. That's right.
Yep.
I can't believe okay, now I will not forget that. But yeah, I knew the MM was Maniac Mansion, but I couldn't remember the rest of it.
Yeah, that's how I remember it, at least. So let's see if Ethan corrects us.
Yeah, there you go. Originally for the C64.
Yes.
Everybody forgets that. I mean.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah,
and it's actually really playable with a joystick.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, no, I had a good time with it, and Sierra could never get their point-and-click adventures working on the C64, unfortunately.
No.
So,
US Gold is getting out of the arcade port business.
With less innovation coming out of the arcades, US Gold, the UK publisher that, amongst others, made their bones publishing ports of classic arcade games like 720 Degrees, Outrun, and Thunderblade to home computers, have decided to only publish the cream of the crop of new arcade titles and concentrate instead on its publishing of foreign label games such as Lucasfilm, SSI, and Microprose.
Probably a good idea at this point in time.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we just saw it in the 7 Minutes in Heaven. I mean, games like Spider-Man, it's just another beat 'em up. And the home computer market, the 8-bit systems like the Spectrum, the Amstrad, and the Commodore 64 are clearly on the way out and would never be able to do a decent version of those games.
No.
And I mean, US Gold is still porting stuff like Final Fight, for example, to the 8-bits. Have you ever played Final Fight on one of the 8-bits?
No, never.
Oh, that's an experience. I can only say that's an experience. Everybody needs to play either the C64 or the Spectrum version because it's an experience.
I'm not sure I want to have that experience.
Oh, you want that experience.
Okay.
You want that. It's one of those things everybody has to go through. The Amstrad version, curiously enough, looks the best, at least in screenshots. I haven't actually played it, but I've seen video of it. It doesn't play well. Just from the video, I can tell you it doesn't play well.
The only good scrolling beat 'em up are for an 8-bit is Way of the Exploding Fist 1 and 2.
Yeah. Wait, Fist 2? Yeah. Wait. Way of the Exploding
Fist 2 was the one that was actually a scrolling one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where you walked. Well, you only had one opponent at a time, if I recall correctly, and you'd be walking from place to place and fighting them, right?
Yeah, and Fist 1 was just a one-on-one fight.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and Fist 3 was
so much.
Yeah, Fist 2 was amazing. I mean, I would put a few other games in that category. I'd put Samurai Warrior, the Usagi Yojimbo game. That was a good one. And I'm trying to think what else.
I played that on the Amiga, actually. I'm not sure I've played that on the 64.
Did they port that to the Amiga? I don't think there's a port of Usagi on there.
Really?
Yeah, no, that was 8-bit only.
I recall playing that on the
Melbourne House.
Okay.
But I'd have to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure that was 8-bit only. And let's see, what else? That's a good question. I mean, there's not a tremendous number of really good side-scrolling beat-em-ups. I mean, everything got ported, Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2 and Double Dragon 3 and then Double Dragon 1 again. But I'm trying to remember if there were any other good ones. Because Final Fight, oh my God, it's not good on the C64. It's a valiant effort.
In the arcade.
Yeah. But oh well. Okay.
So now we're getting to something that's very close to my heart. Digital Research has been acquired by Novel.
Yes. Digital Research, the company founded by Gary Kildall to market his CP/M operating system back in 1974, has been acquired by networking giant Novell. Novell had already been working with Digital Research to develop a more networking-friendly OS to compete with MS-DOS. This is in light of a leaked Microsoft memo in which Bill Gates states that future versions of MS-DOS would favor networking software from other providers other than Novell's NetWare. Novell is hoping that integrating its products with Digital Research's DR-DOS operating system and a newly signed marketing deal with IBM will help them stay market relevant against Microsoft.
Yeah. So you say Novell, I always say Novel, but
I have no idea which one's correct.
Novel NetWare is pretty much the best OS I've ever used for a server. So back in late 90s, I started working, well, not that late 90s. 97, I think. I started working as a network consultant, driving around the entire country, installing servers and setting up networks. And we would always be selling our customers Novel NetWare 3.12 servers, for example. And these things, they would never stop working. I mean, I've serviced servers where I have to like install more RAM or put in a new hard drive, and when I look at the uptime, it would have been running without any errors for 2.5 years, and then I'd have to take it down. And yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I love my Linux and other OSs. I'm a big fan of the Mac as well, but these Linux, Mac, and especially Windows, they can't do anything closely to as stable as Novel Network was. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I remember it from computer labs that I was working in the 90s at universities. And unfortunately, I was never at the level where I actually had to look under the hood or figure out what was going on with it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Microsoft did not want to leave this section of the market untapped, and they did not want to have to depend on some outside firm. We get Windows, Windows NT is going to come out and stuff like this. But yeah, anybody who's used those knows there's probably going to be some downtime there.
Oh, yes. We had, at some point, probably in the beginning of the 2000s, a lot of customers started asking for NT4, I think, instead of the Novel Network stuff. And we'd often have to install services that rebooted those machines at least once a week, just at the night sometime, because otherwise it would crash. The service would literally just crash.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, well, this is about Novel Network. So
yeah. Well, and just to get back for a second, digital research, obviously CPM, we've talked about CPM a ton on this show. We're going to keep talking about it for a while because in the 40-year jumps, the IBM machines have just come in and still tons of people are betting on CPM.
Yeah.
And obviously Kildall is going to be very ticked off because MS-DOS looks a lot like CPM, acts a lot like CPM.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Microsoft will prevail. CPM is basically at this point CPM's already dead. DR-DOS, which is the follow-up, is not going to take off.
No.
And so this is essentially the end of what could be considered the first big OS, the first big software company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in other news, FMV is coming to a PC near you.
Super Video for Windows is a PC add-on card that will allow PCs to run full motion video in Windows. Thanks to additional editing software, users will even be able to cut and edit the video, as well as create documents that have both video and images using a program called V-Editor. All of this for the low, low price of 1,895 Australian dollars.
So finally, they're getting some of the stuff that the Amiga has been able to do for years.
Well, I mean, the Amiga wasn't really able to run compressed full motion video off of a CD in a window.
CD, no, that's
and
true.
not in a window. Because the Amiga wouldn't be able to really do that under a normal Kickstarter.
But with using Video Toaster, of course you could, couldn't you?
Well, yeah, but then you'd have to buy the Video Toaster. You're not really using the Amiga anymore for much more than interface.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, let's face it, the Video Toaster was essentially its own computer that just needed the Amiga as a host. It's kind of like an alien using a space marine. The Amiga is not the alien in this case.
Okay.
I know. Sorry. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Amiga, but the Video Toaster is its own world, separate from everything else.
Yeah.
So this is going to allow you to do a lot of those things. Obviously, it's massively expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the conversion rate for the Australian dollar was back then, but since this was coming out of an Australian magazine, I just kept it in that currency. But it is interesting to see how being able to do this actually in Windows, and it will support both 16 color and 256 windows, is already a huge bit of progress and huge bit of moving forward for the tech.
Yeah, well, in 91, that's quite early to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. And the screenshot that was in the magazine, there's obviously linked to everything we're talking about in the show notes, but the screenshot in the magazine looks very impressive. So,
Okay.
one little window with the video and next to it another window tracking, which frame you're on, which, the frames per second and all this other stuff. So, yeah, would be a cool editing tool, especially back then.
Yeah, it must have been. But quite pricey, so probably for professionals.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, well. So the next piece is Maxwell Group announces U.S. publishing arm.
The ever-growing role of Robert Maxwell's Mirror Group in the games business is being felt with the establishment of Arena, their U.S. publishing arm. The first 3 titles announced by the group are Back to the Future 3, Speedball 2, and Battlemaster for the Sega Genesis, with Predator 2 and Alien 3 scheduled for 1992, according to Video Games and Computer Entertainment magazine.
So those are some good titles, at least. Speedball 2 is actually good on the Genesis.
Speedball 2 is good. Back to the Future 3 was crap on everything.
Yes.
Battlemaster is also a piece of garbage. Predator 2 is forgettable at best on the PC. And Alien 3 is, the Genesis version was okay-ish.
I remember both Predator and Alien 3 being okay, but haven't played them in many, many years.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what format Predator 2 had on the Genesis, because I know the computer versions were like a shooting gallery of some kind.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the Genesis version followed the same design or not.
Okay.
But whatever the case may be, the Mirror Group, in Europe they had the label ImageWorks. So they were doing all of the Bitmap Brothers stuff at this point. And we've talked about them the last couple of months. They've been securing a lot of movie licenses and stuff like this. So they're really building up there to be something important. And of course, historically, they were the ones who first brought out Tetris in the West for home computers through Mirrorsoft and stuff. So yeah. Mirror Group, nothing can stop them.
Well, apart from this next piece of news, mate, Robert Maxwell found dead at sea.
Robert Maxwell, British publishing magnate, has been found dead at sea. His Mirror Group empire controlled many publishing arms, but among them was Mirrorsoft and ImageWorks, 2 prominent English games publishers. He was also involved with the topsy-turvy history of the Tetris rights.
So what happened here? Do we know?
Well, he's on his giant yacht named after his youngest daughter, Ghislaine, who, if you've been following the news in the year 2021, her trial just started last week because she was apparently the madam organizing underage girls for Epstein.
Oh.
And funny how these things come around. Mm-hmm. And he's off the coast of one of the Canary Islands, I believe. And it's just him and the crew of this giant yacht, like 13 or 14 people. And he's walking around, and then they don't see him for a few hours. They go check his stateroom. He's not there. And his body is found in the sea the next day. So apparently he committed suicide. Everybody was like, oh, he seemed to be in good spirits. Well, over the next couple of months, there was already some rumors of financial problems in the group. It's going to turn out that he massively, massively defrauded the pension fund of the Mirror Group to hide a bunch of losses in a bunch of his ventures. And basically, there's going to be, I don't know how many thousands of people will lose, their old age insurance through this. There's going to be a lot of closures. The whole group is going to start teetering. Don't remember exactly how the group itself ends, but the publishing arm is going to end in the next couple of years. A video game publishing arm is going to end in the next couple of years. They're still going to keep going for a little while, but yeah, this is just too big of a financial fracas for them to survive, and they're too small and just don't have the market share to continue.
Well, that's sad, but he wouldn't be the first millionaire to kill himself because he actually lost all of his money or his company's money.
And yeah, it's one of those situations, especially because the kind of fraud that he was accused of probably would have ended with him in jail.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Now I'm going a lot off of memory with the fraud thing because I remember reading about it at the time. But yeah, that's coming down the pipeline. That's still a few months off.
But speaking of dead people, Dr. Seuss has passed.
And this is not video game related at all, but the stories were hitting the magazines at this point, and it's something that hits me personally because I'm a huge Seuss fan. So on September 24th, 1991, Theodor Seuss Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss, passed away at 87. So, yeah. Huge fan of his work. I used to do holiday readings of How the Grinch Stole Christmas for children and stuff. And I still do that for my students now because I've turned it into part of my English law classes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I read the book. I give them a bunch of statutes for things like breaking and entering, grand theft, and so forth. And then I say, I'm going to read a police report to you, and I read the book.
Okay.
And then they have to figure out which crimes actually happened based on the statutes.
Yes.
So it's a fun exercise. I enjoy it every year. So, but yeah, so Dr. Seuss is no more at this point.
Yeah. So for me, I never knew he existed until 10, 15 years ago when they started making the movies, and I had kids. So I've been watching Horton Hears a Who and the Grinch and all of those. But yeah. Great stories.
If the best adaptation is still the, I believe it's maybe 69 or 68, the animated version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yeah.
And it is
the Jim Carrey one.
No, that's garbage. No, this is only like 30 minutes long, and it's Boris Karloff playing the Grinch. And I can't remember the other guy's name, a very famous voice from the old 40s and stuff, who does the narration. And the animation is done by Chuck Jones.
I love the one with Jim Carrey. I watch that with the kids almost every Christmas.
watch the original first.
Yeah, okay.
Watch the original. You will not be able to go back to Jim.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's that good. Sorry. The Jim Carrey version for me was always like a poor man's version of the Chuck Jones.
Okay.
I mean, Chuck Jones is the guy who gave us the Roadrunner and Coyote and stuff. And it's a tour of force of what he does in this cartoon. It's beautiful. And the songs. Oh, they turned the whole thing into songs. And the Grinch played by Boris Karloff, the original Frankenstein. Come on. It's great.
That does sound good.
It is, trust me. Okay. But yes.
We got all the way to the end, mate.
We got to the end. So the only thing that's missing now, other than us doing the repeat of the promos and all that good stuff and reminding people all the links are in the show notes, is to determine what is the word of the episode.
Everyone dies. We started off quite cheerful, and we didn't have any companies going down. Well, not that many anyway. And we had beautiful stuff like Revolution getting their virtual theater engine up and running, but it ended pretty grim, didn't it? So everybody dies.
It did. Everybody dies. It's
maybe just everything dies, or there's a Typo Negative song. It's called Everything Dies or Everyone Dies. I forget. Great song.
You're asking me about a music library I haven't heard in 30 years. I would be able to tell you, but that would sound appropriate for Typo Negative.
Yes. Happy boys.
Great cover artwork. I still remember the cover artwork. Okay, so everyone dies or everything dies. Take your pick, everybody. Okay, Mads, thank you so very much for joining us here again.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. I love having you on the show. And everybody,
just before I go, who's your favorite co-host?
Of course, you.
Thanks.
Yes. Although management does reserve the right to change its mind depending on who's asking the question and at what time.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody check out Mad's work. All the links in the show notes below. Support us on Patreon. Give us thumbs up and all that good stuff. And I guess we're out.
Bye.
Bye.